amortization.
Perfect.
It's not a savings. It reduces the contribution. It's all fantasy.
Yeah, this is Tom Hamilton. When was this plan closed to new hires again?
Back in 2008, I believe.
2008, okay.
Yeah, I think anyone hired after 2008 went to the state plan.
And going, the pay-go scenario essentially has you fairly quickly hitting that $4 million or just over $4 million mark, but then does it really stay there for the rest of the, until all the plan participants have passed on, or does it go up again, step up again at some point out into the future?
No, it'll stay there and it'll start to dwindle away. The thing about pension obligations is to find there's a number that we predict pretty well. Yes, there is a small COLA associated with the plan, but that's again fairly predictable. So once the last person retires, the benefits aren't going to increase other than that small COLA, and people are going to slowly die off, and the benefit payments will decline over time and eventually come down to zero.
Yeah, so I think I would recommend taking a look at that amortization period. If you can get the pre-funded number somewhere, not, I don't know, something less than that 5.7 million, but more than the 4.1 million, that would be, to me, sort of the sweet spot, if you will, if they could phase into, a point that's maybe, 4.7 million or something like that over a period of a number of years. Maybe that would be doable for them. I don't know.
Right. So yeah, I think the first step in looking at the potential phase-in strategy is to first look at a change in the amortization period, and then look at what phase-in would work that would kind of smooth in that increase over time and not be, something that could be sustained.
Right. I mean, I guess looking at it from sort of a purely budget standpoint, if somebody says, "Oh, well, I'm going to max out at 4.1 million anyway, and that's going to happen," and within the next 5 to 8 years, they may just give up and say, "We're not going to, attempt to get to a place where we're pre-funding." So.
Mm-hmm.
Good point. Thank you.
I would just say from a policy perspective that, I do think that we have to explore the benefits of extending that amortization period, because it's so much better to pay 100% of what's actuarially required for the more sustainable payment, rather than, 60% of just a payment that's not even within the realm of reason for what can be allocated on an annual basis.
Okay.
Hey, Kim, this is Mike. Let me also follow up on Tom's comment and Christine's comment. There's probably, there's a formidable 2 decades at least coming to each of these fire districts. And what I mean by that is you see what the pension trajectory will be, and that will be up. Even if we reset the amortization, going back to what Tom said, somewhere between where they are now and the 5.7. And the reason that's important is because they will also face budgetary pressure for their active medical increases, for their OPEB, either the contribution or the payments coming out of the trust are all medical payments, which is subject to a significantly higher rate of inflation when you compare regular inflation to medical inflation. Wages, and then any capital investment, the equipment that they have certainly needs to be retired at some point in time. So there's at least 5 mouths to feed within each of these buckets. So we're certainly not looking to skirt a pension payment, but make it realistic, because they do face formidable tax increases annually for perhaps upwards of 20 to 25 years.
Good discussion.
Unless the grand list grows.
Yeah, we definitely want to be able to look at the whole picture of each district and then hopefully help them get to a 5-year plan, and then they'll understand and be able to understand what a realistic mark for them to be able to make a difference and make sure that they can cover the payments that are due to the retirees. I don't want to cut Jen short on her conversation and also continue to move on. Can we go back to the OPEB? I don't know if we had completed that discussion.
I just wanted to point out one more thing on the OPEB.
Thank you.
If you go to page 9, we have a 10-year projection here of the expected payment for the OPEB at 3 different assumptions: at the current medical inflation rate, and at a plus 1% and minus 1% inflation rate. So you can see again, even on the retiree medical side, we're looking at $1 million increase in benefit payments over the next 10 years as well. So, and on the OPEB side, there's no pre-funding yet. There's no trust to rely on. So, looking at the bigger picture, you can make some inroads on the pension, and then you can rely on the trust and not worry about paying out of operating expenses for the pension. Then you can focus and then return to the OPEB. So it's a balance right there. But you're looking at combined pension and OPEB just for retirees. $2 million in increased budget numbers over the next 10 years.
That's important to note. Thank you.
And then one last thing to point out on the OPEB side is the interest, because the plan is essentially unfunded at this point in time. The interest rate that we're using to value these liabilities is based on a general obligation municipal bond rate, 20-year municipal bond rate as of June 30th, 2020, and it's very low at this point in time. This is a rate of 2.21%. If and when the plan starts to pre-fund and grows assets, that rate will certainly increase, which will bring the liability down. But as of right now, we have to value that at a municipal bond rate until the plan starts to pre-fund meaningfully.
Okay, thank you.
So that's all I had on the first fire district. If there's no other questions, I can move on to West Shore.
I think we're ready.
All right, so I'll first speak to the West Shore pension report. And this report's slightly different. For West Shore, we haven't been calculating an actual return contribution for several years now, probably about 5 or 6 years. We've worked with the district to develop a funding, a strategy, a level benefit amount that they can pay that will allow them to kind of keep their operating expenses with respect to the pension benefits level, and then live off the difference off the pension trust and dwindle it down into the future. I want to bring your attention to page 7, the pension report.
Yes.
We've developed a $2.76 million year-over-year contribution for the next 25 years or so. That is not enough to cover benefit payments year over year, but it covers majority of the benefit payments, and the rest is drawn down from the trust. The far left-hand column is the value of the trust. It'll grow slightly, and then it'll start to dwindle down to 2047. The trust will run out of money, but at that point in time, the benefit payments we expect to reach a fairly level and declining period. At that point, benefit payments will max out at $3 million, and then in 2046, and then slowly decline over the next several years. So this is designed so that we'll never have to budget more than $2.76, give or take, $1 million year over year. So that's a predictable, flat budget that is not expected to increase under this scenario that we helped them develop. So it's not a full pre-funding, it's more of a drawdown. Again, this is a legacy group. The plan is, again, not funded very well. And this is certainly something we can also explore first side as well. But, it's another option. But this is the route that West Shore Fire District have chosen to go down.
Yeah.
The next page on page 8 is just a phase into that level contribution over a 7-year period. This is for illustrative purposes, but I believe that.
So they're even worse off than center. They're only 11% funded.
Oh, yeah. Their budget,
This is Bob White.
70% of
I'm
their
not
budget
sure
goes to
I
retiree
understand
health
your
and
explanation
pension benefits.
on
70%.
page 7.
Before they
Are you
turn on the
saying
lights,
essentially if they keep
July 1st,
funding
they've already
Wow.
spent
at
70% of it.
276, they're going to be, assuming the assumptions you made hold true, that they're going to be okay on the pension side and not have to increase their contribution?
Right, so the idea under this scenario is that they're going to contribute $2.76 million to the trust each year and then pay benefit payments. You can see in the fourth column is the benefit payments. So
Yep.
you can see the benefit payments are higher than their contributions, which is why the trust will eventually start to dwindle down. It grows early on because there's a return on the trust that's greater than the benefit payments coming out.
Yep.
The investment return plus contribution is greater than the benefit payments coming out. But eventually that trust, they'll have to draw down the trust, but they're going to contribute that flat $2.76 million till 2046. You see a little bit of a blip because of the lag behind that 5,000.
Yeah.
Those 2 years are blended together. That's more of a simple blip. But at that point, then they're going to contribute slightly higher. At that point, the trust, after 2047, the trust has run out of money, but the benefit payments have dwindled down to $2.9 million.
They're
So
going down.
that 1 year, and then just pay benefit payments. And then that figure is declining year over year, because at this point, there's very few members, but everyone's retired, and there's 2 members left in the plan, and as they die, the benefit payments will decrease.
So essentially, under this scenario, no increase in the
The real
delivery
problem
rate
is
would be
that,
required to fund
For
the pension.
West Shore and center,
Correct.
the
Yep, there's a budget here.
Let's stop there.
citizens vote on the budget,
Yeah,
right?
some additional
No, but
questions.
if they don't
Within
pass
the
a
same
budget,
concept
this is
here,
what's
it's
happened.
almost like
They don't pass the
cash flow.
budget, the old budget
Yeah,
automatic.
but am I
Oh.
Which is why they
correct in
keep, they don't
assuming
fund the
that
pension, because it just,
A key here is
so
your
that's happened
investment,
year over
you're
year over
assuming
year
a
over year over
3.5%
So
year.
they could come in and say, look, we gotta
Is that
do a
correct?
2 mil increase.
And I
And they
guess
could
more
say, fuck
importantly,
you.
you're
And they'll say,
assuming
forget
it's
about
a
it,
very
and-
steady 3.5%.
No, they have to deliver the
year in,
votes.
year out.
That's why we took over Allentown.
I
They
don't know
couldn't
what
pass a
their
budget, but they didn't have the fallback.
Investment mix is, but I'm assuming.
So they'd go
right
7
now to get
votes,
3.5%,
wouldn't pass a budget.
They've gotta be,
Wow. And then you
gotta
have to make
some
a
money in
decision, are we gonna
equity. And I'm
privatize?
just wondering.
Like,
what
I looked into
happens
that.
if your
I was like,
returns
no, that's
are
not gonna work.
kind of more lumpy, and you've got negative returns some years and positive returns other years. It averages out to 3.5%. But, how does that affect this scenario?
Yeah, so this actually is assuming a 6% return year over year, and that is based on the current asset allocation, which is roughly 60% in equity, and then fixed income or some kind of, or some hedge funds, some alternative assets. So we work with the investment manager, investment advisor, and came up with a long-term return assumption of 6%. But again, this is a deterministic assumption of a projection that assumes a 6% every year. And in reality, that's not going to happen. So that puts some pressure, and then would need to be revised in years. If you have a couple of years in a row of poor investment returns, that depletion date of 2047 is just going to get here faster. And there might be an increase at some point, 20, 30 years out as a result. They could live on the 2.76 for a while, but that it would just, say the money is running out in 2043. If you look at that line, benefit payments that year are $3.3 million, so you're talking about a $600,000 increase just to cover the benefit payments and then draw down. So, you know, it's not something that we're just gonna set it at 2.76 and forget about it. We're gonna keep an eye on it over the, you know, every 2 years we do a evaluation, and look at it again, make sure those make sense. The alternative is to do a more robust analysis and take into account the fact that returns aren't going to necessarily return 6% per year.
But under this methodology, it would just push it out there, flat
Yes.
payment even further.
Yes.
Yeah, and you might look at a slight increase in something, and not a drastic $1 million increase in any given year, but we
Right.
could say in a few years from now, okay, maybe your 2.76 needs to increase to 2.8 million or something. For example.
Okay. Very good.
And they are currently making this contribution, this 2.76?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, that's my understanding.
Well, one more question from Bob White. You had mentioned that one could think about applying this method to first district. What would be the steps that they had to take to kind of get on this train?
I think it would just be a matter of performing the analysis and coming up with what numbers work for their situation. You know, we might fall in the same region of 2.76, or we might fall in a different region. And how does that compare to where they're currently at? And like I mentioned earlier, you know, there's been some discussions about looking at different strategies going forward as to how to fund the pension plan. And this certainly could be one of the strategies that we look at as compared to
Now,
other
at the end of the day,
and see what numbers make.
even though the MARB is well-meaning,
Thank you.
they still have no authority, right, over West Shore or Center?
Unless an MOU is drafted,
I know there's been some discussion over the
or
past
they give
year
it up.
about
I'm assuming they'll pay attention to it.
the feasibility of
O'Brien seems to be swift enough to know what the hell's going on.
investment program for these.
Well, every time I talk to him, you know, he brings that up all the time. We're not under them, you know.
Fewer managers instead of having.
No, I think he's playing it just right.
Kind of bringing them under
'Cause
one umbrella.
what he's thinking is,
that included in
what if-
the range of?
what if they offer an
benefits
incentive someday?
Yeah,
That could.
yeah.
Generate some revenue or increase the funded ratio?
I don't know. So, Christine, that's probably something that is for the next agenda item when we talk about the tri-districts and see where you're at with the tri-district MOU.
Got it, okay.
That level might not have even gotten to the actuary is what I'm thinking.
Okay, right.
Sorry, Jen, can we,
That's okay.
are we finished with? Yes, please.
Yeah, we can move on to the OPEB for West Shore then,
Thank you.
which I don't have open. Just give me 1 minute to open it up. While we hold it.
I can learn to understand you much better.
Who was that?
Maybe Jen from Milliman?
And then this will be respond. For the Western College, yes. So, vote again. First fire.
We're losing you again, Jen.
Sorry. So report provides information. Again, the plan is unfunded, has a liability of about $34 million. And again, this is at a discount rate of 2.21%, sorry, 3.5%. So the reason for this discount rate being different than that first plan is the West Shore Fire District valuation was done as of July 1st, 2019. They're on an odd year cycle, so the municipal bond rate at that point in time was 3.5%, so that's what we used to value the liability. So you can see that the municipal bond rate has dropped significantly over the last year, and so, we'll just keep an eye on it, but until the plan shows meaningful funding, we can't value it at anything other than this.
Thank you, that was the
Yes. If you go to page 5 of the report, we do have some sensitivity analysis shown here. If the discount rate was, say, 1% lower, so that would be 2.5%. So it's still slightly higher than the 2.21 that's used for first fire district, but closer in the more in the ballpark, and that's yielding a liability of just under $41 million. So it's very sensitive to the discount rate, and again, until there's any kind of meaningful funding, we're going to use a municipal bond rate close to a long-term rate of return on plan assets. And again, on page 6 of this report is the expected payout over the next 10 years at the different medical inflation assumptions. We're not expecting as much of an increase for this plan as we are for first fire district over the next 10 years, closer to a $250,000 to $300,000 increase over the next 10 years for this plan. And at that point, I'll leave if there's any other questions. Okay, so then I can move on. So for the Allentown Fire District, we are still working on the OPEB valuation and expect to have that completed in the next week or two. But the pension valuation has been done for some time, so we can go over that today. Again, if we bring our attention to page 5, well, this plan was closed in 2013, but closed a little later. You can see on page 5 and on the bottom graph, the benefit payments we're expecting over the course of the next 10 years or so for the benefit payments to increase about $600,000. Continue to increase some more. There's still more active employees in this plan because we've closed things. So there's a longer horizon on this plan. So at this point in time, we've only predicted out 20 years, but it's maxing out at 2.8 at this point in time. I don't know if that's the peak yet, but again, it's going to steadily increase over time for the foreseeable future. On page 13, you can see that the plan is about 25% funded. An unfunded liability is $24 million. And an actuarially determined contribution of about $2.4 million. The district has made the full contribution for the last year or two. I believe the intention is to continue to make that contribution. But again, if you go to page 17, you can see that's expected to increase a little bit every year, maybe $100,000 to $200,000 per year over the next 10 years or so. And again, this assumes that the amortization period goes down to 1. In reality, we might not actually do that. We might kind of level it out a little bit to protect them from volatility. But again, we don't go as drastic of a ramp up in the increase as we do in some of the other districts.
Wow, goes to 3.3 million
And
in
to the interest rate,
2032.
again, this plan does reflect the updated mortality. This plan is using a higher interest rate assumption of 6.75%. And again, that's reflective of the current asset allocation, which is currently in, 60% of it is in long credit bonds. And interest rates, their exposure to equity is not nearly as high from the other districts, but it's still yielding a longer rate of return because of the rates on these long credit bonds. Long credit bonds are really good to pension liabilities, so they provide very less volatility and a longer return that matches our return assumption pretty well. So that's why we're at 6.75% for this particular plan. So that, there's lots of variation in the interest rate assumption across all the plans, as you can see, but it is a function of whether or not they're funding and what, for those that are funding, what the asset allocation is, which varies quite a bit across the different fire districts.
Okay. This is all helpful. Any other questions for Jen Milliman?
Jen, Bob White, the page, page 17, see you on,
Yeah.
does this say that, I'm just trying to figure out what happens in 2032.
Why, you plan to be around, Bob?
Mm-hmm.
The city
So if it-
doesn't meet.
At that point, the city will be,
We pass out scalpels, Bob, we all commit suicide.
and which means there'll be enough money in the trust to just draw down on the trust for the rest of for the future of the plan. They don't have to make any more contributions, and it just pays benefits out of the trust until the last retiree dies. Now, that's again assuming that the assumption, reality matches our assumptions exactly. Obviously, in reality, that won't happen, and that picture could change. But under this projection, they become fully funded, 100% funded in 2033, and no longer need to contribute.
Wow. Okay, thank you.
But they're funding the ADEC.
Yeah, that's fully funding the contribution, which they've done in the last couple of years.
So at that point, you're still showing member contributions, so does that mean there's still active members in the plan in 2032?
Yeah, that's what that means. There's still probably a small handful of active members in the plan, which is evident as you go back to page 5. You see the benefit payments are still growing in 2030, 33. So that to me, the fact that benefit payments are still growing throughout the entire 20-year projection tells me that everyone has not retired by the end of that 20-year period yet. But there's probably just like 2 or 3 people left at that point in time.
So actually, this one doesn't look so bad,
As long as the budget can fund that, to the level that it's funding is the issue. It doesn't look
Right.
bad, as long as the budget can handle the increases up to the city's, Allentown Fire District's 3.3 when you get all the way up to the, 2030s.
Right.
Okay, because it's gonna grow from the 0.4, so you still got a very large chunk of $1 million.
What was my phone cut out at one point, I apologize. What was the assumption you were using, this is Steve Felsick now, as far as the interest rates and on some of these assets?
So for Allentown, the interest rate assumption is 6.75%. And this one just depends on, it is a function of the plan's asset allocation and how the plan they're invested. So to the extent, we analyze each allocation separately and determine, using our capital market assumptions, what the long-term expected rate of return is going to be. And when we're looking long-term, we're talking about 50 years out, not just 10 or 20 years long-term. And then use that to develop the interest rate assumption. So the asset allocation vary greatly, therefore the interest rate assumption varies greatly.
Okay, so, and I always seem to be the one that kind of says things like this, so I apologize for this, but all these assumptions that you're making are assuming that the mindset of the district is in line with, or continues to be in line with the assumptions that you're making,
That's what Kim just said.
right? I mean,
Mhm.
so here we are in 2020 in a pandemic, and I understand that your actuarial is going all the way up, and we're hoping that we're going to be basically even in 2033, but there's so many assumptions that I think the policymakers in West Haven have to buy into also that are very important,
Correct.
right?
And like I said, this is just one
Captain
set of
Obvious.
assumptions.
Right.
And one set of outcomes. You know, we could look at thousands of different outcomes and rate them and
Right.
probabilities that any given outcome would happen.
Right.
That's beyond the scope of the evaluation.
No, I understand what the scope is of the evaluation.
Yeah.
My point is just as the subcommittee or a person on the subcommittee, these are the things that, and I mean, it's really impressive, you know, all the work you've done here. But again, as a person on the subcommittee, I need to just bring it up to my subcommittee members. And not that they don't know this already, but that some of the assumptions have to really, it's really out of everybody's control what happens.
Yeah. Especially with this evaluation based on, 2019, so, we didn't know we were gonna go into a pandemic then.
No, of course, and I mean, and what you've done here is really impressive. It's very informative.
Jesus Christ, we got a couple vaccines, bud. Cheer up.
And again, Jen, the reason for us to make sure that that's why actuarial reports are normally updated every 2 years.
Yeah. And quite honestly, the gap, the government accounting standards for required records be done no less than every 2 years.
There you go.
Let's talk about
Thank you very much.
question again on
Thank you, Tina.
Yeah, quick question on page 17 again. I noticed that the funding in the out years after 33, the funding ratio goes above 100%. Does that mean there's a surplus?
Yeah, that's a surplus that's getting built up by the investment return, which eventually will, if we were to project this out even further, that would eventually dwindle down.
Right. I don't want to suggest this is a policy, but what is the impact of slightly reducing the city's contributions in the near term?
What are you talking about?
So pensions come down to a proposition of pay now or pay more later.
Well, he's talking about the district's contribution, not our
Their
contribution.
contributions now, it would just take them longer to become fully funded, and they pay more in the long term. The sum
And they
of all
pay more
contributions.
because,
So, because they're not, there's two components that fund these benefits. There's the contribution and there's investment returns. So the less they put in now, the less they're letting earn.
For the same reason your 401k is not as large if you wait until you're 40 to start contributing. I mean, these are
we can't
basic
make use
questions.
of the out-year surplus now.
Bob, we got some information from a guy named Madoff. He says he's gonna get us great returns.
Out years.
Don't worry.
And quite honestly, in reality, once they got to that point in time where they're just retirees left and 100% funded, we would start talking with the district about changing their asset allocation, becoming more conservative, to take some of the risk off the table, which would then change the interest rate assumption and change the picture drastically. But it's
His
still
wife
good to
visits him.
Keep them at 100%, but, once you're
No, I mean, I
fully
think that
funded, you don't need to take on
possibly that
100%,
keeps you
don't
going.
have
Don't forget we're
that.
still.
Oh, yeah.
So the investment strategy.
I don't mind
change
defending
as
Mr.
it
Madoff.
becomes better funded. But there's still, right now, we want to be return seeking to an extent, keep the risk within a manageable level, but still return seeking. Once you reach 100% or 105% or so, you want to change that strategy to try to preserve that funding status and not lose it to the market because there's a pandemic or something, market meltdown.
Don't talk about another pandemic, please. Thank you very much.
Just to follow up on Bob's question, would it be appropriate in your judgment or not appropriate to look at that amortization period and potentially stretch that out a bit. You're at 14 years now, it looks like, 14 years left.
Yeah, so again, we can certainly do that for all these districts, that, and it will lower the contributions now, but make them last for longer. And you'll, in the long run, you'll pay more, but if it helps you, makes it more affordable, and that might be worth, it's maybe a trade-off that's worth it to these districts. We can certainly look at the amortization period for all the districts. They're all until a shorter, even to the shorter end of the spectrum. And the amortization periods were set many years ago, and we haven't touched them yet, but, you know, that is a card that they have, they could definitely utilize, especially given the circumstances and the times. You know, a lot of municipalities and whatnot have been looking at their amortization period because it's just been, you know, very tough times lately.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, I think you had mentioned earlier, if you were to, it does seem to make a certain amount of sense to say we want to amortize the unfunded liability such that the plan is fully funded when the last person retires. But it looks like in the case of Allentown, they're actually going to beat that based on your projections. So
yes. So certainly it would make sense here to lengthen it, and it would be definitely something that could be supported.
Okay, well, it's good to know. I mean, I'm not suggesting they do it immediately, but at least it gives them a potential card to play. So
some options. That's a really good discussion. Thank you.
And I would just add to that, I'm not even sure if 100% fully funded ought to be the goal. I mean, I think that a case can be made that a healthy pension plan where, you know, the plan assets are anywhere between 75 and 85, that to me is a very strong plan. I mean, you could still invest the assets in a way that's not unduly risky, and, you know, you can still, you know, have manageable year-over-year employer contributions. So I also think that I understand in the technical matter, you've got to model the amortization period, assuming 100% funding status at the end of the period. But, you know, as we think about, you know, that option, I think that the bogey is a little bit different than 100%. Or at least we ought to discuss that.
yeah, but I was just going to say, you know, especially given the what, you know, looks like on the OPEB side, the costs are still, you know, rising pretty substantially, and maybe it makes sense to structure this so that they have a little more flexibility to address OPEB if they've got a little bit of wiggle room here on the pension side.
Great point, Tom.
Yeah, and I don't want to overstate this, but I believe the point is critically important, and that is there used to be a more realistic, you know, long-term plan such that there are 100% of the contributions, whether it's, you know, a lower amount, whether it costs more over time because you're spending the period. I think that the discipline behind full funding of the ADA is what's going to allow for these two demands to be met, both the OPEB liabilities as well as the underlying pension liabilities.
Is that it for questions on the actuary and OPEB reports? Jen, I want to thank you very much for your hard work, this great reports that we have yearned to receive. Chiefs, I want to thank all of you for doing this hard work and getting them the data that they need to get these reports to us, for sharing your information with us, because it's for the good of the residents of West Haven. And also, I think we got some really good outcomes from this meeting. I appreciate you making sure that Milliman was on the phone today to answer some questions. I think we had some good conversation today, and I look forward to the next steps of moving forward with this. So this is a good meeting. Thank you.
It's been my pleasure.
All right, then let's move on to the
Jen.
next.
Thank you, Jen.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Jen. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the Tri-District MOU. And Chief, who's going to, I'm going to guess it's going to be Chief O'Brien, because he spoke last time, but you tell me.
I'm sorry, what was the question? It was about the MOU?
Yeah, we're looking for an update on the Tri-District MOU. You had spoke at the last meeting, so I wasn't sure if it's you. I'm not trying to put you on point unless somebody else
No,
takes the lead.
We're all on the same page here.
There you go.
So, it's taken us a little bit longer. We do have an MOU that's agreed upon. There is one change in the paragraph that, since our last meeting has come up. We believe we've corrected that. West Shore's the first one's meeting this month. They're going to be meeting tomorrow. Once we expect that final draft with the modification to be approved, and then the center and Allentown will follow suit. So I think we're on track to get this accomplished in the next by the end of the month, I would say.
Well, thank you. Then we'll look for an update on that at an upcoming meeting.
Yeah, we just had some language between attorneys that came up last minute, but I think they resolved that.
Perfect. Very good. Then we can now move on to the work of the city, but I want to thank the chief, the commission.
You are no longer muted.
Joined us. I appreciate all of you and coming together, and we know that we're in a partnership to help the city of West Haven.
Okay, thank you, Kim, to you and your staff for working with us and explaining the process. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you all Chief. Okay, next item on the agenda is the corrective action plan for fiscal year 2019. Frank, do you want to bring us up to date if there's any changes?
Yeah, we haven't had any changes. I think the items that are still open are the ones that we have no control over. For example, trying to get all the pension plans together. We're going to need commissioner buy-in from all of that. We have the open position in the purchasing department, so that item remains open. We're trying to figure out what to do there.
Well, we should have a body, we should have a body today.
Lee Tiernan says we should have a body.
In the budget for January?
Correct.
Okay, so you haven't been able to fill the position because you don't have the funding.
No, what are you talking about?
The purchasing.
Oh, that was
Yeah.
a council thing.
Yeah, that was the council decided to cut the funding on that position.
Right, understand. So we're at November the 17th. I would say if I was going to hire a position for January, since you didn't get the funding released to address this, which I think is unfortunate, but I do, knowing that you're at November 17th and your attorney is here so he can make a comment if needed, but could you then start to post this position and this one is the one that's posted inside. You already have the person, they need to move over, is that right? And they're doing payroll work, or no?
Yes.
Well, yes and no. I would just say we anticipate filling it quickly. There's an individual who has rights in a particular union, and we had to post that position, the benefit position in that union. So it's a little fluid, but we will have no trouble filling a purchasing position. We advertise it simultaneously with capable union people and also at the outside. We don't wait. So it will be filled the second the budget allows us to fill it.
You can't have somebody pending the hire date of January 1 since the funds are there for January 1.
Yes, we will have someone.
To find somebody?
No, we're doing it, yes, we're in the process right now, so we'll have somebody in place the second we can spend the funds. I can't tell you if that'll be an in-house person or someone from the outside.
Oh, okay. So, all right. So hopefully you'll have somebody there for January.
Yes.
Yes, we will.
Perfect.
Yep, that's the plan.
Okay. Matt, you're on the line today. I know it's a closed item, but I have the auditors started already?
Yes.
Okay. So have they started they're in-house and they're doing their testing?
They're in-house this week, yes.
Today, I believe.
Oh, did they just started?
No,
They've been around.
they've been in-house before, and they've begun their testing.
Oh, okay. Okay.
They're here
I
now.
just wanna read-
Kim, they're here now if you want to talk to them.
No, thank you, Liz. The next item, the one item I wanted to bring to your attention is to make sure that you did a good deep dive into the accruals for the education side that we know is supposed to be closed, but I just want to make sure that, you've looked at that through a microscope so that we can make sure that all payables are booked in the proper year.
Yes, everything we've discussed and put in place was done.
Perfect, very good. No pension, no changes on alternative investments. Frank, how about the capital assets for the Allentown?
Yeah, they sent in their asset list to Bob Z, and we're going through that now.
Okay.
Now, what I will say is that when they sent the list over, they did say that they're going to do a full physical inventory in the next couple of months, which I would have hoped that they had done that before. Sending the list, since I had talked to them a year ago about this. But I will circle back with them to at least make sure that when they do the physical inventory, that it's a true inventory.
Mm-hmm. It's not listed, is that, they said, that was one of the findings, is that they wanted the physical inventory to be completed, correct?
Yeah, I think the finding was that that their capital list hasn't had any deletions in several years, which doesn't necessarily make sense, especially with, like air packs and that kind of stuff normally only have a 10-year life.
So under that scenario, since the information was sent to Bob Z, you probably, it hasn't been sent to the auditor yet, correct?
I believe Bob is compiling it. The goal is to get the auditors everything that they need this week, so that we can still...
So before giving it to the auditor, I would suggest that you take a look at that list, and if there's items on that list that look very dated, that I would look back to Allentown Fire Department and see if they can quickly confirm some items. As long as you make some progress at that you shouldn't get written up, and you could slot the full physical inventory to go into play for next year's assets.
I've already done that.
This year, oh, you have?
I've already gone through it. They had, for example, a couple of computers that were on there that were 8 to 10 years old. I don't understand how those weren't replaced. So yeah, I've sent them a list of questions. I'm waiting to hear back.
Okay, I would definitely I would deplete those and remove them from the inventory if you know that they're not there anymore.
That is exactly what I told them.
Perfect. The next one is the Student Activity Fund. Matt, any update on software for there? And I know that it was the prior auditor that was giving you some direction, but did you reach out to the current auditor?
Yeah, the current auditors are putting something together for me.
Okay.
We should have something, the software system fixed within the next few weeks. And then we'll begin the training on the school administrators on how to use the software.
Okay. You have to purchase it though, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, that's all I have for the audit issues, if anybody has any comments on the 2019 audit issues, findings that are being worked on. Okay, so let's move on to the next agenda, which is number 6, and the fiscal year closed in the audit process. How are you? I heard they're here, so how are we doing?
They are here. The books are closed. All the trial balances have been sent to them. We are in the process of, we finally, this week, or actually Friday they sent it, we finally got the statement of changes for the pension funds. So those will be closed out. And that's, that's the difficulty that we had last year as well, is that it's not necessarily internally trying to get things done, it's waiting for third parties to send us the information. And I think historically, West Haven has been so late in their audits that, quite frankly, these third parties just assume that they're going to be on the bottom of the list again. So there are other priorities, and so I'm fighting a battle of, yeah, we're serious, we want this, and we want it on time.
Right. Yeah, you're bumping somebody else's book of business and making it conflicting for them.
Yeah,
Understand?
yeah,
So,
and
keep it up.
yeah, oh, absolutely. At one point I was sending weekly emails to these people saying, "Where is it? Where is it? Where is it?"
All right. Any questions for West Haven on the year-end close and audit? Frank, one other item is, as they bring items to your attention, even if it's offline, will you please keep me abreast of the findings as they are coming up?
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you. And the next item on the agenda is for an update on the HR Corrective Action Plan.
So,
ADP
yep.
implementation.
So the ADP implementation, I'm a little more comfortable than I was a week ago. As I think we mentioned at the full MARB meeting, we did have a temp that came in with ADP experience, significant payroll experience, and she has been working with Doug and Aaron to help drive this project. She has been designated as the change agent, at least to help roll out, along with ADP, to the employees, to get them up and aware. We have a call weekly with ADP, and the call that's scheduled next week is where we will have the go, no-go decision.
Okay.
They're currently in the process of starting to test the data. I would have preferred that had started a couple of weeks ago, but as you can imagine, the data that we had to send them had significant gaps in it. So there's been some difficulty pulling everything together for ADP, but I think they've got everything they need now. The biggest issue I think we have now is that, Doug and Aaron are just burning out, and I don't want to see that. Which is why, I'm glad we have this additional person. The benefits HR position has been posted. We did have one internal person that would be qualified, so we need to set up the discussions with that. And we did get, I'm told, over 80 applications or resumes when it was posted on Indeed. So they are in the process of going through these. I think the mayor wanted to take a look at them as well. So I'm expecting to have that position filled. I'm hoping shortly, but we are moving forward. That I did actually walk in with Beth Sabo this morning, and she did mention to me that she wanted to get together so that we can discuss the moving forward actions on getting this position filled.
Very good. I think this is one of the positions I had offered to interview the
Yes.
finalists with Mr. Tiernan.
Yep.
Yeah, so,
And the mayor.
yeah, and we're going to take you up on that, Ms. Kennison. So we did get a lot of resumes, but what I would preface that with is, when you focus on those with benefit experience, you thin the pile out very quickly. Our target would be to have just 4 or 5 candidates for interview, and either whittle it down to the candidate or whittle it down to 2. So I think we feel pretty good that we'll have all qualified candidates for you to review along with us.
Perfect. Okay, I do see that you have a lot of items that are on this list that have missed the deadline, so I think that that's where your issue is lying with it going off the rails, and I had some concerns with it, as I mentioned to you before, and so I'm glad that you have somebody on board to help with this process, and I would be looking, and I'm sure that the committee would be looking for an update as to whether this is a go or a no-go decision.
Yep.
And if it's a no-go, I'm assuming you're just prolonging it to when? What would that decision be? 3 months?
No.
No, that would week to week.
It would be a week-to-week decision. The decision would be go, no go for the January 1st payroll.
Okay, and if you miss the January 1st payroll, is your intention that you're going to have a cutoff year and you're going to backfill the data?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is not, obviously it's not a preferential situation where you have the data in 2 different systems.
Right.
But we could certainly work with ADP. The fewer number of payrolls that are actually captured outside of the ADP system, it would be easier to get that data put into it.
I would agree.
But you could see that, you could see on the chart there, on the grid, what I was alluding to before. It's pretty much every box is either Doug or Aaron, and that's like 80 to 90% of the boxes that have that in there, and that's what my concern is. They're being stretched thin.
Yeah. Yeah, and it still seems like, though, there's some substantial data that needs to get moved into the new system.
Yes. Yeah, and that's what they're working through now. We've got, they've sent us some preliminary schedules for the UAT and some of the scripts that they want to go through to test the data, and that's what we're gearing up for now.
So would they consider then taking a look at this work plan and changing the due date, and either changing the due date or creating a new to be determined date in here, or putting it in your comments? Because it just keep continuing to look at, that you missed the deadline until you get it. I think that you should have a new due date of when they must have that in their plan of what they need first versus later.
Yep, and I think I don't know if we have a call today. I think.
Yeah, I mean,
this afternoon.
we meet with them. We have 2. We have a lower level nuts and bolts meeting, and we have a higher level make sure everybody is on board meeting for the I guess for lack of a better phrase, supervisory people. So we're meeting every single week. So I think we could deal with that. And ADP is cognizant of it. They certainly don't want to fail. They've offered us additional resources to make sure we get to the finish line. They did send us our time clocks. I mean, it's moving along. I think they're going to instruct us. They don't want the contract to fail. They'll instruct us if they don't think they can make it. And we're all sitting there. Yeah, we're all sitting there with eyes wide open too as to whether we can make it. Look, killing a dog is the only thing worse than failing to get somebody their paycheck. You hear about it very quickly. So there's no room for failure here. It has to be exact. So we're very cognizant of it. We think about it at every single one of these weekly meetings. And if we think we'll have to move the date, that's going to happen. But right now we're chugging along. I think the other side of it too, Ms. Kennison, is the fact that we want to keep the pressure on. If we say to people that the deadline's not going to be there, we fear people pull back and they don't work as hard. So we want to keep the deadline fluid.
No, understand. I do. It is a pressure when you're doing these projects. My concern is that there was a lack of staff, and that's why, if you were to ask me, the lack of staff is what caused this. You needed extra bodies to pull this project off. So now it's coming to a halt, and so I hope that we're able to make this deadline.
Yes.
That's my wish.
And I've instructed the person we recently brought on that their only workload is this. This is 100% of their day. This is what their focus should be on. Unfortunately, she does have experience with Frank's group at Perkin-Elmer, but I guess you can't screen everybody completely.
Don't hold that against her.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to your point, Kim, regarding the new dates, I think what I was trying to allude to before is that the conversation that I want to have with them is before the go no go decision next week. I think we need to understand what those drop dead dates are. So if we don't have this data by this particular time, the whole thing comes to a halt, and I think we need to understand that.
Right. Yeah, if you don't have the data for, benefit information, or you can't print a report because you didn't develop the report, all the data in. If you can't get out, you need to have a payroll register,
Correct. And we're focusing, what they've done is they're focusing on the payroll aspect of it first, and then going into the benefit side of it, so that at least come January 1st, knock wood, that first payroll cycle will be in their system.
Yeah, that makes sense. Any questions from the members? Okay, and the HR Corrective Action Plan, I know that now that we have Mike Malone back, we have Julian and Mike were working, as well as Aaron Frank, on trying to get the Corrective Action Plan updated and break it out a little more. Mike, do you have any comments on the HR Corrective Action Plan, or Mayor?
It's Michael, with Julian's help and his great technical skill, we've made a lot of progress in the last 2 weeks. What Julian's helped me do is to take what I had as a probably very confusing flow chart of activities and responsibilities and timelines and everything else into a plan that's more clearly understandable to the people who have to implement it, and also expanding on the tasks required in order to accomplish most of what we need to accomplish. So I'm hopeful we're going to be meeting again on Thursday, that very shortly you'll see a much clearer, more informative plan than the last one that was presented. And I think it'll also allow for a much clearer roadmap for the people who have to follow it to understand the responsibilities and the steps to achieve each of the respective objectives and the long-term goal of what this is hoping to accomplish. We also have to work on possibly modifying some of the positions in the budget further, just to bring consistency to what the Human Resources Consulting Group had suggested. There needs to be a little better alignment there, and that's something that we'll work on with the city in the development of next year's budget.
Very good. Okay, we'll look forward to that, Michael. Thank you for you and Julian and working with the city to get this get a plan together.
Okay.
Any questions from the members? That's my last item on the agenda, unless anybody else has items to discuss today. If not, okay, I will make ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Steve Bell, signature.
Thank you, Steve. Second.
Second.
Thank you. All right, I know we are all in favor, so we shall thank you, and we won't see you till after the holiday, so I wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving, and
Happy Thanksgiving.
happy Thanksgiving.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Turn these off.
Yeah, how do you turn that off, Frank?
Let's see. Who can turn this off last? Stopping. So it looks like that's stopped. I'm just gonna ask Marcia to confirm that.
Take your plug out.